Please join me in welcoming Teresa Carlson, President of the General Catalyst Institute. Amy Bonatibus, Chief Corporate Affairs Officer at PayPal. And Karen Kerrigan, President and CEO of the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council, exploring how policy and markets can work together to help small businesses complete as technology reshapes the economy.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. How you doing today? Great to see everybody. It's wonderful to be here. Let me, first of all, thank the Public-Private Partnership Institute for pulling us all together today, for the leadership of Rhett and Katie and Tammy. Really, I mean, over the years, in terms of my relationship with Rhett and his team, he's really been a great leader in terms of pulling us all together and collaborating, particularly during very disruptive periods, I would say, and we've seen them over the year. I happen to be pre-internet, so so we certainly, you know, I've seen a lot of changes in the economy and up in the technological front as well, in terms of how small businesses have responded, how they're navigating all these changes, and so this is a great conference today, a great summit, and I look forward to the conversation. As noted, I'm joined by Teresa Carlson, President of the General Catalyst Institute, and Amy Bonatibus, a Chief Corporate Affairs Officer at PayPal, and both are going to help us explore how public and private sectors can work together to help small businesses harness AI and digital finance. PayPal's commerce platform serves millions of small businesses, and General Catalyst builds bridges between technology and government, and they bring complementary tools and sort of viewpoints to this, and I'm really excited about our conversation today. So, you know, this is a general question for both of you. So AI and digital finance, they're no longer emerging technologies. They are reshaping the economy and how business gets done. We found that, have found that in all of our small business surveys that we've done over the last 2 years. We have another one coming out next week that says 72% of small businesses believe AI is going to impact their industry. 45% say it's going to be transformative. So we're seeing that a segment of small business owners is actively using AI, adopting, investing in AI. They see the value and they want more. But many are still only exploring or watching from the sidelines, or they may not see the need. So what is the opportunity for America's 33 million small businesses in terms of adopting these transformational technologies? And what is the risk if they don't? And I'll start with you, Amy.
Great. Thank you. And thanks for having us here today. I mean, there's really no other topic that I would argue is more important, particularly for SMBs, than this one. So I'm glad that we're dedicating the time to it. And, you know, as you point out, small and medium-sized businesses are literally the heart of our economy. They make up half of all US GDP and employment. So if they fail, it's not a good thing, you know, generally, but also from an economic perspective, it would be catastrophic. So that's not an option. And, you know, when we talk about only 1 in 4 using it today, I think if we step back and look at even where we were a year ago, SMBs aside, you were seeing not the adoption that we have seen. So it is transformative. It's happening incredibly fast. Within the last year alone, the number of people that are starting on with an agent to even search versus like going to a browser is already double. And where that's going to be even in a year or two is really very dramatic. So this is something that we really need to be there to support SMBs, to help them adopt. And they're eager to do so because the ones that have used it are already seeing the benefits, both from a resource standpoint, the amount of time it's saving them, but also efficiencies, whether it's, you know, marketing and creative content that they're able to push out, or emails, even something as simple as like the time to write a communication to their constituents and, you know, and their the shoppers is just really has been quite meaningful. So it's very, very critical.
Yeah, I agree. Teresa?
Yeah, agree with everything you said. Can you guys hear me? Good.
Yep.
It's interesting because we represent over 800 startups around the world, and they're all SMBs. I mean, a lot, some have emerged. Circle just went public. They're not obviously SMB, but they all start there. And if you look at who's using AI, really what we call a more adoptive or applied AI, it's really small businesses. They're moving much faster with the use of AI because it's a competitive advantage for them. And if you think about how it force multiplies their capabilities as a small business, it's pretty astounding. To your point, any chatbot, deep research, now they don't have to go pay large firms to be able to update their business plan, to look at competitive analysis. I mean, it's pretty phenomenal, like the information flow and data that they have, the content that they can utilize now to really think through their business plan. How do they expand what they're doing? What's the market opportunity out there? These deep research capabilities would have been very hard for them to go purchase. So I just think about anytime a technology can help our small businesses have a competitive advantage, I think that's amazing. And I'll go back years ago when I was at Amazon Web Services, when I started there in 2010, cloud computing was similar. Like no one had, not just unless you're a large institution, you didn't have access to large compute. Right? You couldn't do massive research. And now here we are with AI, and I always thought, hey, that helped the individual developer, small business. And now here we are with AI with something that's truly profound with their ability to think through the business model. And the only other thing I did see, I did get an opportunity to hear Secretary Loeffler, and I am pretty amazed at the programs that they are actually, I'm sorry she couldn't be here today, because I am really amazed at the programs that the Small Business Administration is pulling off. She shared she was on a 50-state tour to look at companies that were kind of rebuilding manufacturing. And I think the fact, one, we have two massive things going on right now here. One is that there's an AI compounding effect that we see for small and medium businesses, but also we now see that the U.S. government has a real focus on building and rebuilding components and tools here in America. So having these programs that I think the SBA can roll out and other large and even private sector that can support these efforts, I think is really great on capital.
And I guess, we really didn't, I mean, what are the risks if they don't? I mean, it's just, you get left behind, right? I mean, it's just going to be very difficult for any business, right, to compete where they're not using these tools, take advantage of these tools, right? The innovation, what we see in terms of all the outcomes, from the small business owners that we talk to. I mean, just being able to strategize on the growth of their business, and what we hear also is that allowing their employees to really move to higher value work, right? That's going to make their business more competitive. Amy, I'll come back to you. So PayPal, you touch millions of small businesses through all your products, your payments, through your financing, and now AI-powered tools as well. So when you talk to small businesses, or your folks do, what do business owners want from AI?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, when you think about partners, they want help navigating it. And because of the speed by which it is evolving. And so I think you talked about it, Teresa, but just what the programs that both government and nonprofits and of course the corporate sector are putting in place to educate small, medium-sized businesses is so important, because it's, you know how it is to run a small business. Every day they're consumed with the business. And then to think about something like AI on top of that most of them aren't experts in, is really challenging. So I think being there for them, I mean, one of the things that we actually just announced last week was a small business ad manager. Today, only 11% of small businesses actually advertise on their website. But if you can imagine
Love that, by the way.
yeah. So what this will allow them to do is one, if I, am an SMB and I have a sports store in Omaha, Nebraska, now I could have Nike and because again, Nike even knows there are people that will only shop with small, medium-sized businesses, but sharing the insights that we have on consumers and, bringing corporations and SMBs together, we can advertise, a Nike sneaker on an SMB site. So when they buy their gear, we know they're in the market for that Nike sneaker, serving that up on the SMB platform and site, and then SMB getting a cut for that, right? And so that's not happening today, but that's just such an obvious, marriage of insights and bringing kind of large corporations and SMBs together. But then similarly, giving that SMB the ability and insights to advertise wherever, TikTok, Meta, again, because we as a large corporation, as others do, have the insights, we can anticipate the consumer's needs. That's really hard for SMBs. They don't have access to that data. And AI is such a beautiful way to kind of marriage that capability. So it's an exciting, this is one, of course, one example. There's many others, but that's what SMBs need. They need insights. They want to be able to get in front of their consumers with relevant information. And so that's, one of the things that we're very hyper-focused on.
That's excellent. That's great. Teresa, when you launched the General Catalyst Institute, you did it to bridge, technology and policy, right? So what problems did you see that required a new kind of public, private type of partnership, especially when it comes to small business and emerging technology?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I've been in big tech for over 28 years. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I started working with General Catalyst, and Time just named us the number 2 VC globally. So we always say we're number 2 or number 3, but we are a global investor. We have about 50 billion under management. And I like to say that we're an evolved venture capital group. And the reason I say that is we are really trying to think about how we move companies and governments through transformation with the use of AI, whether that is through, because you want to have a common ability between companies, again, that public-private partnership with their own capabilities and capabilities you can bring to bear. But one of the big things that I realized, I've always, by the way, if you go back and look way back when I had really big hair, I was doing videos. I was laughing because I told the secretary I was doing videos about SMBs, like small, medium businesses, and the importance years ago when I was at Microsoft. So I've been thinking about this in partnerships. When I got to General Catalyst and I saw the types of companies we were investing in, which were, we're talking 19-year-olds, transformative technology, doing amazing things. But what was missing is they didn't have anybody really advocating for them at the industry level with policymakers. And we primarily invest in highly regulated industries. Financial services. In fact, we have an investment together just recently. So we have a lot of investment partners, which is fun because you can think through these things. Yeah. But financial services, energy, defense, intelligence, manufacturing, healthcare. We have some gaming. We have some retail stuff, but it's mainly the bulk of what we do. So if you think about it, if you're not talking to lawmakers about the transformative technology that's happening, and the blockers and opportunities in place, that can totally get missed. It could just, because you have a lot of larger companies advocating, and that's important, by the way. We believe you can't have one without the other. We're much, we think better together, but there are those details about what small businesses need. They can't afford the same type of capital that's required to do massive compliance or massive overburden. And you've heard a lot of people talk about AI patchwork at the state level. If you have every state that has unique requirements for AI, that's going to stomp out small businesses because they cannot afford to go in and meet a regulatory requirement that is different at every state level. It's going to be not great for us as a nation. So our job is we go in and I like to say we work proactively with lawmakers to solve problems, give them ideas, bring these companies to the table so that they can get a sense of here's the kind of innovation and transformation you're talking about in this country or wherever we are in the world. And it's really, I'm excited because the lawmakers, the White House, the individuals at the agency, they're like, wow. So they've come to us and said, we want to see more. What do you think about this? So they begin to ask for our feedback. And I'll just say one other thing. We are not just doing this. Of course, we love our 800 companies. We want to see them all be super successful. But we think all boats rise to the top. So if we do this well, we think this helps everybody. And that's the reason we advocate at the industry level versus on behalf of any one company. And then just as an example, if we have one company that says, hey, we really need help, we also then help source and find them the right either policy group or help them find other groups that could really make sure that they're successful.
That's great. We're going to talk a little bit about barriers, and one of the, when you brought, what we don't want to be a barrier is, sort of government policy, right, run amok or regulation, where you do have a 50-state type of framework, right? And then that really is going to drive the costs of things that make it very complex and difficult and burdensome for small businesses to comply, but also the effect on investment and innovation, right? And even, moving forward in the next big thing in terms of innovation. So in terms of barriers, what barriers, Amy, make it hard for small businesses to adopt AI? And maybe what can government and business working together, to ease, to improve adoption and to encourage adoption?
Yeah, I think if you step back and just look at barriers SMBs face each and every day, the number one barrier, if you ask any SMB, they would say it's access to capital. And so, that applies to AI. It applies to, resources. It applies to making sure they have the right inventory in hand. So solving that is key. You talked about it, Teresa, too. And so, again, partners like PayPal, for example, we've given $30 billion over the last decade in capital to small and medium-sized businesses. And what we've seen is we've done A/B studies, and where they have that capital infusion, we see a 36% increase immediately in the amount of funds that are coming into their PayPal account because they're able to accelerate a lot of their business plans and make sure that they're making the right investments in order to grow their business. So that is the biggest barrier. As it relates to AI, it's the same thing. It's finding the right resources to invest in so that they are propelling themselves and that they're acquiring the right capabilities for their business. So, it's exciting, but it's also scary to them because it's just one more barrier they have to think about. And it's one that's moving so fast, as we talked about earlier.
I so agree with that. It's like around the world. The reason in the U.S. our companies do so much better is they do have more capital, but because they're so innovative and they move fast, they need more. Because they're looking, the thing I love about the U.S. is the entrepreneurial spirit that we have here, and people just don't give up. If they fall down, they're like, get back up. Let's just figure this out. And I've seen so many entrepreneurs that have failed, but they don't look at it as failure. They look at it as I'm learning. So I'll call it fail fast and recover. And to your point, like capital, though, is the one thing that they need. And the second part, I will say, of the capital is, teaching them and working with them on how do they utilize that capital really efficiently. And that is something I do believe AI now is going to help them force multiply their capabilities on that, because they don't have to use capital for things that they had to in the past. They can use AI. And look, the human touch to me is always going to be key, but if they can use AI to scale as they think through how they hire, even that can be a capacity or capability that they didn't have in place. I'll give just a really quick example. In some of my travels over the years, when I went around the world, I would see these amazing companies and startups in places like France and the UK and Italy, and they were great companies, and they had amazing ideas, and they would hit a wall because they had no capital. There was literally no capital sources. And here in the United States, the thing that's always intrigued me is there are so many buckets of capital. What we have to make sure we're doing for small businesses is ensuring they know how to get those buckets. And we talked about, this is one of the things we were talking to the secretary about, was how do we make all the companies a lot more aware of the buckets that government now is putting out there? And then, like for us, we, 30 billion, that's amazing, by the way, that you've done that. Congratulations. For us, we look at every day we do an investment that we're putting capital, and then we're also putting mind share and support and executive leadership into them. But we also try to help them find other non-dilutive buckets of capital that help them move faster. So I think one of the things that we need to have a shared value around as leaders in government is making sure our small businesses understand where they go to get that capital.
Yeah, and I guess that was going to, Teresa, just to follow on to that and a question I had in terms of, when you are working across, the public and private sectors, what makes partnership work versus breakdown? I mean, what should the private sector be offering? Asking? What should they be offering in order to make these partnerships work?
One of the things I've always said, one of my own personal tenets in working with government for so many years, is go in with a partnering attitude with government. Don't go into, here's all the things that are not working. Because heaven knows we could all look at, these are not working, this is not working. But that's not really getting you from here to there. So I find it's about solutions, truly going in with a spirit of giving them solutions and then helping them get there. Because look, it's not for the faint of heart, let's face it, right? I mean, it is not, but when you do good things in public-private partnerships with government, really amazing things can happen for lots of companies, for lots of individuals, if you go in with a partnership spirit and don't give up. So I found, come up with ideas, make sure they're pretty concrete, find all the leaders within government, both at if you were talking about the U.S., the White House, on the Hill, the agencies, I'll call it, they are kind of a patchwork, but you have to find out and identify who wants to solve this problem. And if you really coalesce groups of individuals, large businesses and small, it is one of the most amazing things about America. We can go in and drive that change. But something I will say that's missing on the venture capital side that we're trying to change is doing that, because when when we talk about it, they were kind of flying in and flying out of DC. They were coming in and coming out versus let's have a sustained presence. Let's decide on the things that we can really do to help our businesses. Go into government and say, look, here's some ideas. And I will say, I find this administration to be one of the most commercially oriented administrations that I've seen in a very long time. Like, they are a lot of business people. They're open to ideas. They are trying to be, like, they're working, trying to solve problems, even across agencies. Of course, I know we would love to see them move. We all want to see things move faster. But when you bring these ideas, they're like, how do we do that? What's the idea? So I think for us, key, let's bring them really concrete ideas and then help them do some experimentation and trials to get them going.
That's really great advice. So for the time we have left, I'm going to have like 2 more questions. The one question we talked about, barrier capital, right? Access to capital. But from the ecosystem perspective, we have folks in the room who represent business organizations. I run the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council. We all have our networks, government officials, people up on the Hill. What's the one thing or 2 things that would make the biggest difference in moving businesses, small businesses, from exploring to adopting? I mean, what's the light bulb moment? What can we all do to be supportive of that?
I think, Teresa, you said it. In my view, too, it has to take public and private partnerships. You can't have one without the other, because we can provide the capital, we can build the capabilities, but at the end of the day, it's going to be grassroots. It's getting in there. It's training the small businesses. It's being a resource to educate them. If anyone today tells you they know exactly where things are going in the next 3 to 5 years, I would question them really hard on that. I think we have a fairly good understanding and certainly can make some definitive statements, but the reality is even the largest companies, including PayPal, are figuring this out in real time. And so being there for small and medium-sized businesses and leaning on, certainly government programs, SBA is a great resource, but also the nonprofit community is going to be critical.
I agree. Teresa?
I 100% agree with that. The other one I think that we must do, this is just not even an option, is workforce training. Like we just, in this country, we really, and everybody's talking about it, but now we got to do it. We're thinking about how we participate in doing this in the right way. But this technology is moving at a speed and pace like I can't even believe it. I remember thinking 10 years ago, oh, I'm seeing, when we thought releasing one service a year when I was at Microsoft, every third year was like, that's so fast. If anybody's at Microsoft, we used to release Windows every 3 years. Office, we're like, that's amazing. And then I get to AWS and we're launching 2,200 new services a year. I don't even want to say what they're doing. And like OpenAI, we can't even count them every day, the new services. So that's fantastic, but very scary. Because people need to learn and be trained on those tools. So we're going to have to band together, again, in the public-private partnership to make sure elementary schools, high schools, trade schools, retraining, universities, and everybody is going to have to get on board with this. And because we don't really know what workforce is going to look like. And then the second thing I would say is make sure that we all are opening up contract vehicles. Just a simple thing, make it much easier for small business to contract with both large enterprises and governments. Let's just make sure we create that path. And that's not that hard to do, quite frankly. So I think those two things for me, in addition to what you were saying, I think that's...
Excellent point. Again, in our survey coming out next week, that was precisely one of the findings from small business owners. I mean, the ones who are using it love it. They see all the benefits. But one of the challenges in terms of navigating is, working with their employees on the training piece, that they're using it right, they're using it optimally, and it's to the benefit of their businesses. Just really quick, I know you said anyone who tries to predict anything in 3 to 5 years is a total idiot, but I'm going to do just that. So jump ahead, it's got to be very quick. 5 years from now, we saw how 20 to 25 was like a blink of an eye, right? So let's go to 2030. If we're doing this right, I mean, how can things fundamentally change for small businesses? I mean, what do you see, in terms of, this whole sector and how they're deploying or innovating, in this space as well?
Yeah, and look, there is one thing that is absolutely certain, which is, 3 months ago, you would use an agent for search and, serve me up the top 5 wedding gifts for a colleague in Omaha, Nebraska. And I actually did this for my husband's colleague recently, and it served me up, and I was so excited because Made in Omaha was the first one to come up, and then I was so intrigued, like, how did they crack the algorithm on this? So I'm still figuring that out, but that is a perfect example of like SMBs, and when you think about 3 to 5 years, they have to be in that search query, and they have to be the result that comes out on top. But I'm going down a little bit of path. So I put in that search. 3 months ago, it would show me, here's the top gifts, here's where you can go for them. And then I'd go and type it into Google, Made in Omaha, cutting board, and personalized, knives. And then I'd have to go off the platform to do that. Now you can actually just check out, if you're actually buying a shirt or sneaker or something personalized, you can, in some of these, some instances, but this is where it's evolving, they'll know it's you, they'll serve up your shoe size, they'll tell you it's in stock, you tap to pay, PayPal's right there, your wallet's already embedded, already integrated in the app, and 2 days later, the shoes show up at your front doorstep. So that wasn't possible 3 months ago. That's possible today on some platforms. Within the next year, that'll be table stakes. And so when you think about where it is going, it's absolutely that. And it has to be, this is where it gets back to the insights and the personalization. The internet was made for information, it wasn't made for products. So SMBs have to have all of their SKUs in. So it's so complicated, but the point is, it is that training that's going to be critical so that all of their products are in there and they're the ones being served up when someone asks that question.
That's great. And Teresa, very, very quickly, and people are, business owners I just got e-commerce down. Now it's agentic commerce,
That's exactly right.
Well, first of all, what she just said is a true applied AI capability, and what I call that's the belly. That's getting into the belly, end to end, where you don't have to move in and out of an application, but it's seamless. So she just described a true agentic experience on applied AI, which is what we're going to get to, where you don't have to move in and out of applications. I'm going to go a totally different direction and say healthcare. We are the largest investor globally in healthcare as venture. And we work with a lot of doctors who build a lot of good businesses, and they all pretty much agree, as you see and use a physician today, will be completely different. You will probably only need your physician face-to-face maybe for 5 to 10% of what you do. Everything else will be through applied AI capabilities. You'll do everything. And they will work with you on a plan, but they all believe, look, the ability to diagnose, prescribe, set a plan, is going to be very much AI-driven. Everything's going to be looked at through your DNA, matching on pharmaceuticals, the test you'll get, the type of cancer treatments that you're going to have. And again, it's already moving very fast, but most physicians that are in tech and doing this agree they're not going to be needed that much. They have to be there as that in between, but they're going to be using AI for a lot of capabilities in healthcare.
Fabulous. This has been a really terrific start, I think, to the summit. So please join me in thanking Amy and Teresa. And it was just really terrific. Thank you so much.